Hi, friends. I'm Miss Holly. I'm so happy you've joined me for Sunday School today and our unit, Building and Baking with the Bible. So let's say our opening prayer together. Will you pray with me? Dear God, open my ears to hear your word. Open my eyes to see your ways. Open my hands to show your love. Open my mouth to sing your praise. Open my heart to love you more. Amen. Well, this morning we're going to start by talking about forgiveness. So I'm going to tell you some situations, and you need to decide when you hear the situation if you think it would be easy to forgive someone or hard. So if it's easy to forgive in that situation, you would give a thumbs up. And if it's hard to forgive, you can do a thumbs down. Okay, so here's the situation. First one, your family forgot your birthday. Thumbs up or thumbs down. Easy to forgive, thumbs up. Hard to forgive, thumbs down. Your friend didn't keep a promise they made to you. Easy to forgive or hard to forgive. Your mom washed your favorite t-shirt in the wrong temperature and shrunk it so small that you can't wear it anymore. Easy to forgive or hard to forgive. All of the kids, every kid this morning on Zoom Sunday School gave a thumbs down on the mom who shrunk the shirt in the laundry. They were going to have a hard time forgiving their mom for doing that. Your brother or sister or mom or dad ate the last ice cream sandwich that you'd been saving for your after-school snack. Easy to forgive or hard to forgive. Somebody at your school took home your book bag by mistake. Easy to forgive them for that mistake or hard to forgive. A classmate made fun of you. Easy to forgive or hard to forgive. You know, all of us have times when it's hard to forgive. And also sometimes when we mess up, we might feel like it'll be hard for other people to forgive us. Well, it's a good thing that Jesus isn't like us, because we can never mess up so badly that Jesus would not forgive us. In our Bible story today, we're going to see how Jesus forgave Peter for doing something that Peter said he would never, ever do to Jesus. In today's story, we'll also hear Jesus ask Peter the same question 3 times in a row. Of course, Jesus knew the answer to the question that he was asking Peter, but he wanted to help Peter know for sure. The question was, do you love me? It was an important question, and be sure to listen as we learn what Jesus said to Peter after he answered that question. So our story is Jesus forgives Peter, and it's found in the Bible in John chapter 21, verses 1 through 19. 3 days after Jesus died on the cross, he came back to life. More than once, Jesus appeared to his disciples and proved that he was alive. One day, Jesus met his disciples while they were fishing on the Sea of Galilee. Peter and the other disciples got into a boat and had spent all night on the water, but they did not catch any fish. The next morning, as the sun was coming up, Jesus stood on the shore. He called out to the disciples, but they did not recognize him. Jesus said, "Men, have you caught any fish?" "No," they yelled back. "Put your nets in the water on the right side of the boat, and you will catch some fish," Jesus said. The disciples did what Jesus said. So many fish were in their net that they could not pull it back into the boat. One of the disciples said to Peter, "It's the Lord." Peter tied his clothing around himself and jumped into the water so he could swim to shore. The rest of the disciples traveled in the boat back to the shore, and they pulled the full net of fish behind them. When the disciples got out of the boat, they saw bread and a charcoal fire with fish on it. "Bring some of the fish you've caught," Jesus said. So Peter pulled the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153 of them. "Come and have breakfast," Jesus said. Jesus took the bread and gave it to him. Then he gave them the fish. This was the third time that Jesus had appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. Jesus turned to Peter. "Do you love me more than these?" he asked. "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know that I love you." "Feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus asked Peter again, "Do you love me?" "Yes, Lord," Peter said. "You know that I love you." "Take care of my sheep," Jesus said. Jesus asked Peter a third time, "Do you love me?" Peter was very sad that Jesus asked him a third time. Peter loved Jesus very much. "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." "Feed my sheep," Jesus said. Jesus told Peter that he would bring honor to God. Then Jesus said to him, "Come and follow me." So the night that Jesus died, before this story takes place, Peter pretended that he didn't even know who Jesus was. In fact, he lied 3 times and said he didn't know Jesus. These bananas, they look perfect, no spots or anything. But if they don't get eaten right away, the skin will continue to change. So let's think about these bananas and have them represent Peter as he's going to tell the lies about not knowing Jesus. So each time Peter tells a lie about not knowing Jesus, he feels a little bit sad. First time, that's the first lie he tells. And then, like the bananas, he tells a second lie, and look what happens. And then the third time he says he doesn't know Jesus, wow, look at the outside of that banana now. It's so messed up looking, right? It doesn't look beautiful and perfect anymore. But the good news is that Jesus always knows what's really in our hearts. No matter how bad things look on the outside, just like with this banana, if you've ever had a banana like this, you'll know that, look, even though the skin looks bad on the outside, it's still perfect on the inside. So when we mess up, Jesus will always forgive us because he knows what's in our heart. And Jesus doesn't forgive us because we deserve it. Jesus forgives us because of the sacrifice he made on the cross to defeat sin. And Jesus rose again to show that death had no power over him and that the way back to God was complete. Jesus is the Lord who forgives and makes things right again. And when we trust in Jesus, we are forgiven and restored to God. In fact, Jesus forgave Peter and gave him a very important mission. Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" One time for each of the 3 times Peter had denied Jesus. And each time Peter said that he loved Jesus, Jesus commanded Peter to care for others. That was the important mission. These men, a lot of the disciples, were fishermen, but God wanted to use them as fishers of men, just as Jesus had promised when he first called them to be his disciples. Instead of catching fish, they would tell others about Jesus. Even though the disciples had left Jesus when he was arrested and even denied him, Jesus still wanted to use them in God's plan. Jesus showed Peter forgiveness and restored him because he wanted Peter to be a leader in the early church. Peter knew that he was forgiven and he had a special and important job to do. And you know what? That same job applies to us. We have been forgiven by God, and nothing we can ever do will erase his love for us. And our job is to love him in return, to accept his grace, and to serve him by taking care of his people. That is our mission, and it pleases God so much when we fulfill that mission. Now we'll watch our cartoon version of the story.
The Miracle of Mercy, Peter. This is Peter.
Hey-o! Whoop!
Peter was a fisherman who was called by Jesus.
Hey!
Peter saw the many miracles of Jesus, and he heard all of his teachings. When the time came for Jesus to die and take away the sins of all the world, Jesus had one final meal with his friends. During this meal, Jesus told his followers that the time had come for him to leave them.
Huh?
Peter asked, "Where are you going?" Jesus told him Peter couldn't follow him now,
What?
but that he would follow him later.
Wait a second.
But Peter said, "Why can't I come now? I'm ready to die for you." Jesus said, "Die for me? Peter, before the rooster crows tomorrow morning, you will deny 3 times that you even knew me." Then Jesus and his disciples went to the Mount of Olives so Jesus could pray. Along the way, Jesus told his followers that they would all abandon him.
Uh-oh.
But Peter said, "Even if everyone else leaves you, I never will." Jesus said, "Peter, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny 3 times that you even know me." But Peter wouldn't believe it and vowed that he would stay with Jesus until the very end. The other disciples vowed the same.
Yeah, I hear.
Later on that night, Jesus was arrested by men sent by the religious teachers and priests. Peter tried to fight for Jesus, and he cut off the ear of one of the guards.
Ow.
But Jesus healed the guard and went quietly with the captors. All the disciples scattered just as Jesus told them they would. The men led Jesus away to the house of the high priest. Peter and another disciple followed them. Peter came to warm himself by their fire.
Hello.
A servant girl noticed him in the firelight. Finally, she said, "This man was one of Jesus' followers."
Oh, ma.
But Peter denied it for the first time. He said, "I don't even know him." After a while, someone else looked at him and said, "You must be one of them."
Oh.
Peter, for a second time, said, "No, I'm not."
Okay.
About an hour later, a man who knew the man whose ear Peter cut off said, "Didn't I see you in the olive grove with Jesus? This must be one of them. He comes from the same place as all of them."
Yeah, you're right.
But Peter said,
No.
"I don't know what you're talking about." And then Peter heard the crow of the rooster. Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Jesus' words flashed through his mind, and Peter left the courtyard weeping. Then Jesus died and was placed in a tomb. The disciples heard that he had come back from the dead. Peter even saw the empty tomb and believed that Jesus was alive again.
Woo-hoo!
And Jesus appeared to the disciples to show him that he was alive. Some of Jesus' followers were together when Peter said, "I am going fishing."
Okay.
So they all went out to the sea, but caught nothing all night. At dawn, they saw a man standing on the beach.
Oh, hey, over here.
The man called out to them and said, "Have you caught any fish?"
Nope.
The man said, "Throw out your net on the right side and you'll get some."
Okay.
So they did, and they couldn't bring in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then one of the men on the boat said to Peter, "It's Jesus." When Peter heard that it was Jesus, he swam to the shore while the others pulled in the load to the boat. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them.
Bring me some fish. Got it.
Jesus said, "Come have some breakfast." While they were eating, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, you know I love you." So Jesus said, "Then feed my lambs." Then Jesus asked again, "Do you love me?" Peter said again, "Yes, you know I love you." And Jesus said, "Then take care of my sheep." And then a third time, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time, so he said, "You know everything. You know that I love you." So Jesus said one last time, "Then feed my sheep." And so Peter went on to feed Jesus' sheep by helping establish the church and by writing books that we can now read in the Bible. And though he denied Jesus, he was forgiven, and many came to know the love and forgiveness of Jesus through Peter.
Hi, I'm Dan, and I've written a book called The Friend Who Forgives. It's a true story about how Peter failed and Jesus forgave. Let me read it to you. A long time ago, there was a man named Peter who was best friends with Jesus. Peter was a fisherman. He was strong and brave, but he often said the wrong thing. Do you ever talk before you think? That's what Peter did, again and again and again. Peter loved to fish. In fact, one day he and Jesus had fish for breakfast. Fish for breakfast? That's weird. But we will save that part of the story until the end. On the day that Jesus first met Peter, can you guess what he was doing? That's right, Peter was fishing. "Follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men," Jesus told him. Can you imagine that? Peter fishing for men? Jesus explained that just as Peter liked to search for fish, Jesus had come to search for people who needed forgiveness. Peter loved being friends with Jesus. He saw Jesus do lots of amazing things. One time, Peter's mother-in-law was sick. Jesus healed her. Another time, Peter was about to drown in a storm. Jesus saved him. Slowly, Peter realized that Jesus was more than a friend. He was God. He would never let Peter down. But sometimes, Peter let Jesus down. Like the time Jesus explained to his friends they had come to die on the cross, but that he would come back to life to offer forgiveness. All of you will run away. You're going to say, "You're not my friends," Jesus said. Peter spoke up right away. He did that a lot. "I will never do that," he said. But Jesus told him, "Before the rooster crows in the morning, you will say 3 times that you're not my friend." I would never do that. Jesus is my best friend, Peter thought. When soldiers came to take Jesus to the cross, Peter pulled out his sword to stop them. "Put your sword away, Peter," Jesus said. "My Father says this must happen." Jesus let the soldiers take him to a courtyard to stand trial. Peter followed from far away. "Aren't you one of Jesus' friends?" a young girl asked as she opened the gate for Peter to enter the courtyard. What do you think Peter said? "No, I don't know Jesus." It was a cold night, so Peter walked over to a fire where some people were warming themselves. "Aren't you one of Jesus' friends?" someone asked Peter. What do you think Peter said? "No, I don't know Jesus." Then someone else stepped forward and looked closely at Peter. "Yes, you are one of Jesus' friends, aren't you?" he said. What do you think Peter said? "No, I don't know Jesus." Right then, at that very moment, a rooster crowed. Jesus turned around and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered that Jesus had said, "Before the rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you're not my friend." Peter was so sad. He knew he had failed Jesus again and again and again. He didn't just need to find other people who needed forgiving. He needed forgiving too. Peter felt terrible. He ran out of the courtyard and he cried and cried and cried. Peter had let his best friend down. And now it was too late because the soldiers had taken Jesus away to be killed. But Peter didn't stay sad because Jesus didn't stay dead. 3 days later was the first Easter Sunday when Jesus came back to life to offer people forgiveness. But would he forgive Peter for failing so badly? One day, Jesus went looking for Peter. Where do you think Jesus found him? That's right. Peter and his friends were fishing. Jesus called to them from the beach. Peter jumped out of the boat into the water and rushed to the beach to see Jesus. And this is where Jesus and Peter had fish for breakfast. Fish for breakfast? That's weird. Peter was so happy to see Jesus alive, but would Jesus forgive him? Peter wasn't sure. Maybe Jesus wouldn't want to talk to him. Maybe Jesus wouldn't want to be friends with him. But yes, Jesus did want to talk to Peter. And yes, Jesus did want to forgive Peter. Wow. And since Peter had said he didn't know Jesus 3 times, Jesus gave Peter the chance to say 3 times, "I love you, Jesus." That's how Peter became a fisher of men. Peter spent the rest of his life telling people about his best friend, Jesus. He told them that if they put their trust in Jesus, he would forgive them again and again and again. That's because Jesus was Peter's best friend. He forgave him again and again and again. And if you trust in Jesus, he will forgive you too, again and again and again.
I like that story. That's a great story about forgiveness. And so you can always remember when you see a banana that just like the banana being perfect on the inside, when it doesn't look so great on the outside, there's nothing that we can ever do where Jesus wouldn't forgive us because he knows what's really in our hearts. So now you can choose to respond to our story today by either building or baking. So if you choose to respond with your Legos, you might want to build the scene from Jesus cooking breakfast on the beach for the disciples, or there's lots of other things that you could create, whatever stood out to you from this story. Our recipe for today is chocolate chunk banana mug muffin. And as you'll see here in just a minute, it uses an overly ripe banana that doesn't look so great on the outside, but on the inside, it's perfect and makes a delicious muffin. Here's the list of ingredients, and this recipe, you can find it in the weekly children's email that I sent on Friday. There's the picture of the ingredients, and see, there's what my banana looked like. It had lots of bruises and spots on the outside, but it was perfect on the inside. So the first step that you'll do is you'll put 1 tablespoon of butter in a small bowl and melt it in the microwave. Next, that you'll open the banana, and you can see the inside of the banana was perfect. There wasn't even a single spot on that banana. So you'll add it into the bowl with your melted butter and use a spoon or a fork to mash your banana. Next, you'll add 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and you'll break 1 egg and add it right into the bowl. And then you'll mix all those ingredients up together. They'll turn a nice yellow color because of the egg. Then you'll add your dry ingredients right into the mixture. 1/4 cup flour, 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon cinnamon, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. And you'll stir in all the ingredients until they're all mixed in. And then the final step, you'll fold in 1/4 cup of chocolate chips. And when you fold something into a recipe, you just gently stir it in to incorporate it into the mix. That's what your batter will look like. And then you will take an oven-proof mug, about 10 to 12 ounces, and pour the batter right into the mug and put it in your microwave and microwave for 2 minutes. And it will puff up in the microwave. And actually, I've made it twice, and it actually puffs up over the top of the mug. But as soon as you take it out, it falls back down. So then there's what it looks like once it's microwaved. And the final step, if you want to, you can add just a little drizzle of honey over the top, because when we bake with honey, it's not quite as sweet as using sugar or brown sugar. So you might just want a little drizzle of honey just for extra sweetness. And you can eat it right out of the mug. Just give it a chance to cool off just a touch so you don't burn yourself, but it's delicious when it's warm. Thank you so much for joining me for Sunday School. I hope you enjoy your muffins. And I want you to remember this coming week, our special mission is to care for others. So look for ways this week that you can do that. And also remember that there's nothing that we can do that God won't forgive us. And also we should show that same forgiveness to others. Well, I hope you have a good week, and I'll see you next time. Bye.